Daryl D. James, welcome to the Edge broadcast.
Hi, good to be here.
Hey, now the Stetson doesn't intimidate you, does it?
No, no, no.
Because it's also not only it's also a truth altimeter. As we talk, the hat is also listening. In fact, I went to a series of topics out there in Branson. They're called Gen 6, and a lot of it was about UFOs. And somebody recognized me from this broadcast. I was sitting out in the audience, and they said, welcome everybody here. And oh, I see Daniel Lott's hat made it. I didn't make it, but my hat did. So it has. In fact, I think it needs to have its own channel. But Daryl, man, we're going to be talking about some pretty crazy stuff tonight, and you were in the thick of it. It has to do with the Navy's secret space program. But honestly, I knew and I have talked to others about the government's secret space program. But is the Navy's space program different than, say, the general military industrial complex's space program?
Yeah, I would say it is. I would say the whole it's Solar Warden is the Navy's space program. I remember like the emblem was an anchor with a globe behind it, and it had superimposed on it Naval Space Command is what it
Mm-hmm.
said, and that was Solar Warden's emblem.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would say things like Space Force and things like that. That's more like that's Air Force. I would say that's more of Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm not really sure of the actual mission of Space Force, but Solar Wardens seem like exactly what the name says, like wardens of the solar system, kind
Mm-hmm.
of like guarding the solar system.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was first told about it with Gary McGinnon. Whenever the executive officer asked me if I ever heard of Gary McGinnon, who is this was in England at the time, and it was only 2 years ago at the time, less than 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he was the guy that hacked into NASA and got a bunch of stuff about off-world officers
Mm-hmm.
in a file called Solar Warden. This was in a file called Solar Warden, off-world officers and pictures of cigar-shaped craft over the moon and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Um, so tell us, how did you get involved? Let's get some of your history here from your enlistment to the Navy, I suppose, from there and get into what the program you got enlisted into.
You said when I first started in the Navy, or just when
Yeah,
I
yeah,
started?
yeah. From your enlistment on to where it started getting crazy.
Yeah, it was January '99 when I enlisted. I went in the Great Lakes, and I became a SeaBee, which is construction battalions. Um, I did that for 5 years. I went to Iraq in 2002. So I was in Iraq. Like I got there, what, 2 or 3 days before the war started. So yeah, it was pretty lively there. But and then I did that, and then after that, I went to England. I actually wanted the cola. It was a they call it cost of living allowance, and
Mm-hmm.
because the British pound was worth twice as much as the American dollar. Plus, you got like isolation pay because it was out in the middle of like sheep country and tin mining and things like that. So we're
Mm-hmm.
out in the farms. But yeah, and I just I had watch one night, and I walked up and looked. No, actually, it was like the second day I was there. I had a guy come up to me who worked in the garage with me. I didn't work in
Mm-hmm.
the underground base. I worked in the garage, and he said, "Hey, do you want to? You have to go and escort some civilian workers into the underground base." And I thought that was strange because when I went in, I went to the quarter deck, and there were some sliding glass doors I had to walk through, and there was a metal detector. It looked like a airport metal detector, and I just the British guys, the civilian guys, they didn't want to go into the metal detector. The first guy said, "I'm not walking through that bloody thing." So I thought, well, I don't want to walk through it either. And yeah, there was a guard behind like a stainless steel table, and he said, "No, you go through." So I walked through, and I actually had to be escorted by somebody with a higher clearance than me because I only had a secret clearance at the time, and somebody who had a top secret clearance had to escort me. And yeah, I just watched these guys fix a pump, and that was about it. And I noticed there were things like white, blue, and red stripes on the ground. I found out later, like guys who worked in the bases knew this, and I lived in the barracks, so I listened to them talk. And it was white was secret, blue was top secret, and then red was like above top secret. And there were certain halls where only red, red went everywhere. White went to the fewest places, just mainly down hallways, main hallways. Blue went to some rooms, but red went everywhere. And there were certain areas where it was only red, and those were like hallways that were dark, very dark, no lights or anything like that. And yeah, so I did that, and then the I had watch. It was balls to four, they call it, which is like midnight to 4 in the morning on a Friday. And I saw Michael Aquino at the quarterdeck, which the quarterdeck is like the lobby of the base. It's like the main area. It's where you check in, before you go on leave and things like that. And he was looking through some files, some paperwork. And I said hi. He was, what was it, colonel. And I said, good evening, sir. And he said, how you doing? And I think he was probably looking through my files now that I knew more about it. He was looking through whatever he was looking up things on me, I think. And we just talked for a second, and then I walked away, and that was it. And then guys started talking on the base, and I think they already knew that they were going to get me into this program because they wanted me in this program. And we were playing like Halo one time, video game Halo on
Mm-hmm.
Xbox, and one of the guys said, "Hey, did you see that reptile today?" And another one said, "Yeah, he was big." But in my head, I was kind of thinking it was just like a reptile, like because I hadn't really gone deep into the underground base yet. And he another one of them said, "Yeah," and he talked funny too. And I said, "What?" And then the guy goes, "Oh, right, you're new here." He's like, "Yeah, there's reptiles that live underground, the underground bases." And I said, "You have like four-legged monitor lizards talking to you?" And they go, "No, no, they walk upright like us." And I said, "Really?" And they said, "Yeah." And I thought they were just messing with me because I was new. And so I just kind of blew it off. And then I had another balls to four watch next Friday, which isn't really common. So I did it on another Friday. And there was a first class petty officer there, petty officer of the watch at the quarter, sitting at the desk, and he's behind a computer. And I was just sitting down, and I had Rover watch, which is like the guy who walks around on base, kind of like security, make sure nobody's doing anything or anything like that. And he points at the computer monitor and he says, "What do you think about that?" And when he pointed at it, it looked like a still black and white picture of a gray, like your stereotypical gray, like
Mm-hmm.
looking up
Wow.
at a camera.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And then I said, "What did you get that off the internet?" And he said, "No, look." And when I looked, next to that sliding glass door, there was like this big window that stopped about 6 inches from the ceiling and 6 inches from the floor. This is a very big, like large window. And there was this stereotypical like gray standing behind it, but it was more like a light brown, it was like a light brown that had a bit of pink to it, like a hue of pink. And I was just really scared, like I didn't know what to do. I was just sitting there, and I was just sitting down. He said, Do you mind if it comes in here?" And I said, "Does it mind if I look at it?" Like I didn't know if it was like an animal or anything like that, like it would attack me, because I was gonna stare at it. And he said it doesn't mind, but like in my head, I remember hearing like, "No, I don't mind," like it said that.
Hmm.
And it walked out from the sliding glass door, and there was an English guard behind him with like a green beret, like English, I think, army or something like that. And it had like a pistol in its hand. It looked like a brushed metal, polished metal, little small pistol. And his hands were really long. Its fingers were really long. It had to like carry its hands in C shapes, or it would have like drug its fingers on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Like it looked like it could pick something up off the ground without bending its knees or back. And I just got back from Iraq, so I started saying gun, gun, gun. And eventually it stopped. And I stood up and I yelled gun. And it stopped and it showed me the pistol. It put its hand out and it said, "It's not a gun." And I noticed like the guy behind him, the English guy, the guard, he had his weapon at the ready. Like he had it down, but not pointed at me, but he had it down off his sling, off his shoulder. So I sat back down and it just took apart like this government issue Dell computer, just this old junky Dell computer that was on the ground. And that gun was actually a drill. And it didn't have to like guide it in or anything like that. The bit in, it was just able to just do it one after another like a machine. So, it took I don't know, 8 screws off the side, 10 off the back, 8 off the other side, slid the casing off. It popped out 2 gigs of RAM, put it on the table, grabbed two more that were already up on the table. It was short, so I had to reach up.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
slammed them in, slid it back down, and it kind of like flicked its hand forward and was able to like catch the screws in between its fingers. and was just setting the screws that way every time. And it just did it almost just as fast. It was like 8, 9 seconds. It seemed like it, and it's
Hmm.
boom, 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 and then
Wow.
put it back together again.
Hmm.
And yeah, then it just stood there for a while and let me look at it. And I looked at that side, and it kind of turned its head for me, and I did the other side, and it was just let me look at it, and it moved its hands back and forth when I looked at its hands, and it was just smooth. It had no navel, it had no genitals, had no nails. It was just like smooth, and it looked kind of eerily like synthetic, but like organic at the same time. I don't know, like it didn't really have wrinkles or creases like flesh would have. It looked almost like plastic or something. It was
Hmm.
bizarre, look very big black, and it had a fold of skin from its tear duct going down to like its cheekbones.
Wow.
And after a while, I got kind of bored with it, and it just walked away. And the petty officer of the watch said, "Do you think you could work around something like that?" And I said, "I guess so." Like I just, I said, "I guess." And he said, "You're smart." And I said, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah, like really smart." And I said, I said, "What do you mean, like 120, 130 IQ?" And he said, "More like 190, 195."
Hmm.
And he showed me a series of like lines, like color coded lines on the monitor in front of him. And there were two by itself. And he said, "See, you're the second smartest guy on base." There was one line above me, and then there was a gap, and then there was like the rest of the guys like underneath. And they kind of like it kind of went up and down a little bit, but they were just different color coded. And he told me that that metal detector I went through was like a complete scan. He was telling me things like you smoke, but you don't have any clots because I smoked at the time. And he goes, "Well, that's because you drink because I drank at the time." And and he was just telling me everything. Like that machine did everything, I guess. And he was asking me things like, do you have any hobbies, or did you have any hobbies as a kid? And I told him I played classical guitar, and he's like, "Well, they'll like that." And he was just saying they, and I said like, "What do you mean they?" And then he said, "There's Germans up there," and I
Whoa.
said, "Up where?" And I was like, "Space," and he's like, "Well, it's kind of like that." He goes, "But on the moon too." He said, "There's Germans in the moon," and but he really didn't call it space. He said, "Yeah, it's something like that." It's kind of how he put it. And yeah, this was it when it was a lot, and I remember like kind of I don't know. He was very nonchalant about it, and I kind of got upset. I thought, I said we should tell people about this, and I was kind of freaking out. And he said, "You need to calm
Mhm.
down." And he told me to take a walk, and I went for a walk. But yeah, that happened. And then that Monday, because this was Saturday early morning. It was probably I don't know 1 in the morning or something like that on a Saturday. And then on Monday, the executive officer came to the garage where I worked, like my duty station,
Mhm.
and one of the guys came up and said, "Hey, the XO wants to talk to you." And I said, "Is that common?" Because I thought maybe because I was new, because they might call you to their office, but they don't come to you. It's very uncommon.
Mhm.
And he said, "No, that's not." He said, "No, this has never happened before. The XO's never come down to ask to see someone." So I went out and I started walking with him. And at first he was just small talk until we got to the sidewalk. And then he said, "How does it feel, to have a 195 IQ?" And then somebody told me that on the base, a guy named Lando, because he watched Star Wars, everybody called him Lando, like Lando Calrissian. And
Mhm.
he said that he said, "You know who the smartest guy on base is?" Because I was only the second smartest. And he said it was the XO. And so I told him that, and he's like, "Well, who told you that?" And I kind of, you know, told on him without meaning to tell on him because I was like, "Well, I'm only the second smartest." I said, "But you're the smartest person on base." And he said, "Who told you?" And eventually I said, but everybody knew because everybody was coming up to me and saying, like, "Why are you a SeaBee?" And the guy in the quarterdeck asked me, like, "Why are you construction battalion if you have such a high IQ?" And I said, "I have a marijuana paraphernalia charge when I was 19, so all I could do was construction or be a cook." And so I told him that, and then he asked me if I ever heard of Gary McGinnon, what I said before about hacking into NASA. He said the only reason they didn't extradite him is because he would have been able to call witnesses and it would have blew the whole lid off Solar Warden. He said that if I volunteered for this program, I would be able to. I would pilot a 4 kilometer long starship. I'd make commander, and
Wow.
I'd pilot. Yeah, and he said it looked like the ships from Battlestar Galactica. Is how he put it. It looked similar to that. And yeah, so I was thinking about it, and when I walked through the machine, I told him, I said, my father had a heart attack when I was young, when I was around 19, and I said, he didn't have any kind of warning or anything. It was called a widowmaker. He just had a clot, and it just broke off, and he died. And I said, if we had a machine like that, a scanner that could tell your clots and everything, read clots, I said it would have saved his life. I said, why aren't things like that brought to the public? And he talked about, population control and things like that. And then I thought about it, and I said, 20 years is a long time. Because he told me about well, how he put it was, he said, you volunteer for the program, we'll put you in the program for 20 years. You'll, we'll send you back in time 20 years, wipe your mind, age regress you 20 years, and then you'll wake up in bed like nothing happened. And I said, I could believe in time travel and, going back in time and getting your mind erased. But I said, I found, age regression hard to believe. And he said, after what you saw, just saw, you find that hard to believe. And I said, well, touche, sir, but I do. And he didn't really seem to want to convince me any further. It seemed like a waste of his time, and he just kept carried on. And I asked him, things like, 20 years is a long time. Can I have a family? I was like, can I have children? Because I thought, I was what, 25 at the time. So I'd be what, 45 by the time I got back. Almost as old as I am now. I'm a little bit older now. But yeah, he said you could have, he said with your scores you'll be expected to have children. And I said, well, what happened to my children? And he said they'll be taken care of. And I said, well, will I ever be able to see them again? And he said no. And I said, well, that sounds very sad. And he said, Mr. James, and he's calling me Mr. now, which is only officers call each other Mr. And he's already referring to me as an officer. And he said, Mr. James, I guarantee you won't remember anything. So I thought about it, and we walked a little bit further, and I agreed to it. And I shook his hand, I saluted him, and I said, he said, one more thing, Mr. James, you're going to be escorted by a reptile, and he's big. And even with that story I just heard, I really didn't know I really wasn't wrapping my head around, I don't know, reptiles that walk upright. You know what I mean? I never really gave that a thought really in my mind. I wasn't into, UFOs
Mhm.
and things like that. So I didn't
Right.
really ever think about it. And, I shook his hand, saluted him, he walked away, and that was that. And then another time we were playing that game Halo again in the barracks, and one of the guys we were waiting for the next game, and one of the guys said, I think I think people, well, it was a small command, so people knew I volunteered for it, and I think we were talking about it in the barracks like openly, and this one guy said, "Oh man, I volunteered to be in the secret space program, and I was on the moon, and I worked in mines, and your only motivation to work was sex. So they had all these brothels there, and if you didn't work, they shock you. They had shock collars around your neck, and if you didn't work hard enough, or if you're in a group and somebody in the group didn't work hard enough, they shock everybody." And I said, I kind of thought maybe the executive officer said that to everybody, and they just wound up being in mines. So I thought, I asked him. I said, "Well, the XO came up to me and said I would be a pilot of a 4 kilometer long starship. Did he say that to you?" And he said, "No, nah, man." He said, "You're going to be up there." He's like, "They're going to be take good care of you." And he was talking about this like this was normal. And I was looking around at the other guys, and they were just like, "Yeah, people volunteer for this on this base."
Sure.
And all of a sudden, like a feedback came into the room. I heard a feedback, like a microphone feedback, and it said something like, "Now hear this, now hear this. You are now in violations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Articles, 59 and 60 or something like that. If you don't stop right now, you'll be, fined up to $100,000 and 10 years in prison. That'll be all." And it went away. And I said, "What was that?" And they, no, I looked around. I said, is there a speaker in here? And one of the guys said, with their technology, they don't need speakers. And I said, well, what is it? What was that? And he said, we shouldn't talk about it anymore because they're listening. And then the next day, that guy, Lando, came up to me and he said, "Did you hear that voice in the room?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "It's something called," he said, "Do you see those rectangular blocks on the towers? There was like a tower dish by the underground base, and it had like these blocks." And he said, "That's 5G technology." And this was like 2003. So, I had never seen that before. He said, yeah, they can actually take a microwave beam from that 5G technology and put it into a room, and they can hear everything and see everything and look around. And if they want to talk, they can talk to you too. They can talk out loud. So, nobody has to go into your room and bug it or anything like that. They can just monitor you with this 5G tech. That was news to me. And yeah, I moment. Well, there was another time, and this was like the night before, maybe a couple nights before, and I was in the TV lounge. It was maybe a Wednesday, maybe a Thursday, and I was going to leave on a Friday. And I was in the TV lounge, and the door was open, and right across the hall, there was a guy, and his door was open. And it was almost like one of those things where he wanted to hear me. It was like they were trying to acclimatize me to the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard him say, they're going to take you into a density chamber, is what he called it. And he said most of the ETs we deal with are fifth density, and we're only third. So they're too strong, too fast, and their IQs are much too high. They're much too intelligent for us to work with. He said, so you're going to go from artificially from third to fifth density. You're going to become strong. Your IQ will go up 200 points, and you'll become more of a collective, like in a group. And so I just heard that. I remember this guy talking about it. And when I came back, I remember him saying, I was in the TV room again, and I remember him saying he wasn't ready yet because of what happened. And yeah, so I did it. And, it was a Friday, and I showed up with my working blues, my Johnny Cash, as they call them, because you wear like all black, like the man in black, you wear a black tie, black shirt, black pants. And I signed like this much papers, this many papers, like a
That sounds
book
like
size.
government right there.
Yeah, yeah. And it was like a book. It was like buying a house. There was the same petty officer of the watch, and he was sign here, initial here, sign here, sign, and he was flipping the pages for me and doing that, and I had X's already. And then I started reading it, and he said, well, if you try to read this, we'll be here all night. And then I started getting the cold feet. I didn't want to do it. And he said, look, you're already back there, so just sign the damn papers, is what he said. So he was saying I already came back from the future and I was being age regressed. I was already in the underground base, because age regression takes a little bit of time. And yeah, so you come back a little early.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, that was kind of eerie. And so I signed everything. I sat down, and I was just waiting. And he got on the phone and said, all right, send him in. And I waited a few minutes, and I was kind of daydreaming. And he said, all right, go with him. And I looked up, and in that same big window, there was this really big reptile behind it. And he was dark brown, and he had like ridges going down his head, like that. He had like alligator eyes, and his mouth went like straight across and then straight up. And you could kind of see little teeth peering behind like his mouth, but no lips, no real nose, anything like that. Kind of this slits, flat face, and no ears. Big, and he was muscular. His shoulder muscles were huge. He was wearing one of those tight blue suits that you see.
Mm-hmm.
And I stood up and I said, Jesus Christ. I said, he's not going to eat me, is he? And the guy said, he's much stronger, much faster than you. If he wanted to, he would have eaten. He would have, killed you and eaten you by now.
Wow.
And when he said that, the thing sighed, like it heard me. Like I did like a 3-second inhale and a 3-second exhale. And I said, he's not telepathic, is he? Because the last one was. And he said, yes, he's telepathic. And I remember in my head, I said, sorry about that. And so I was, nervous, got up real slow. And there was a different guard this time that came out. And he was like a skinny kid. And so I eventually started walking, and I walked through the doors. When I walked through the doors, I saw it come out of the room. Like it was like a kind of like a separate room. It was almost like a way to get you ready for what you're going to see. It was like this separate room. Yeah, getting you ready. And we walked in the underground base, and we were walking deeper and deeper, and the kid kept on like butt stroking me in the back. And I didn't know this, but he was an off-world German. I asked the executive officer this lately. So I didn't realize the situation I was in. I was already like a slave. Like I didn't know like what I thought I was just still in the military. And yeah, he was hitting me in the back. And at first I thought it was because I was looking around, so I just started looking forward. And he kept on hitting me in the back. And I said, please stop hitting me. I'm not looking anywhere. And then again, he hit me really hard. And so I turned around and I grabbed his weapon and I put my leg behind his legs and I threw him on the ground, knocked the wind out. And I said, if you hit me with this weapon one more time, I'm gonna shove up your ass sideways. And he kind of scurried back, stood up, and then he looked at me and looked at his weapon, looked at me, looked at his weapon, and I just held it out and he grabbed it and he ran off. But I heard the reptile say, "Leave us," in a very deep voice. And yeah, he took off. When I turned around, the reptile was just right in my face. Like he took a step forward and he was like flexing all his muscles to show me how big he was. And I remember seeing like his eyes peering over his chest muscles. I was looking straight up. And he was probably about 9.5 feet tall. He was very tall, very tall. And I remember I said, "I'm sorry about what I said before. You're much more civilized than him." And the only way you can tell that they're mad at you with reptiles is their eyes get like small. They don't bare their teeth. They don't have muscles like just like a reptile. And his eyes just got wide again, and he just turned around and started walking. And he said, "Follow me." And it kind of opened up more. It got bigger as we were walking, and like the underground base, we got into like bigger areas, bigger rooms. And I remember seeing like bicycles leaning up against the wall, and like golf carts, and we were gradually walking downhill. So, somebody had to go somewhere far, they could just jump on a bike or golf cart. And we eventually got to like a catwalk where we walked up, and there was like a room with like an airtight door with the wheel on it and everything like that, a watertight door, airtight door. And we walked in, and it looked like a gas chamber chair. And it looked because of the sealed door and everything, I thought it was a gas chamber. And I remember they showed us one in elementary school when I was a kid. They put it in a trailer and they showed us the gas chamber to like for the Dare program, so we wouldn't break the law or whatever. And it scared me as a kid, and so that memory came back. I got really scared. I thought it was trying to kill me, and I tried to get away. I ran, and it grabbed me and threw me in the chair. It started strapping me in, and I was struggling to get away, and it like headbutted me. I think it was so
Hmm.
fast I didn't know what happened. I blacked out for a couple seconds, and I came to, and he was working on my right leg. He had my right arm and working on my right leg. I was starting to unstrap my right arm, and he said, he put his hand against my chest, and I could feel like his fingers up here and his palm right here. That's how big he
Hmm.
was. And he said, "Don't make me hit you again." And he leaned in when he did that. So I took my thumb and I just jammed it right in his eye because
Good.
I was cornered and I was scared.
Hmm.
And he kind of just leaned back and closed his eye, and he just leaned forward and pushed against my chest until it collapsed and until my chest pushed up against my heart, and I just blacked out. I woke up and I was all strapped in. I remember he said something like, "I'm sorry I have to do this to you." And he started like doing something in the room, but he was like facing, this way. It was like near the wall. So I could only see his peripheral. I couldn't really see what he was doing. He was like pushing buttons or something. I have no idea. And then he walked out of the room and he sealed the door. And I remember I was like hyperventilating because I was thinking maybe if I hyperventilate, I'll pass out and I won't feel it. But then I felt something, and it was more like an out of body experience. It was kind of like weightlessness, kind of cold, and then like I was at peace. And that was like the density chamber. It was pushing me up like to an artificial fifth density. And I remember I came to, and I was already unstrapped, but I was still sitting down. And I looked over to my right, and there were three guys on the floor, like on a mattress, like a king size mattress on the floor. And they looked like they got picked up from the club. They were wearing this like, button up shirts and things like that. English guys that maybe got picked up from the club. And then I looked in front of me and I saw the back of the reptile. And it was kind of gesturing like it was talking, but it wasn't talking. And then there was this guy who looked like a Gestapo, in front of him, and he was facing towards me, but he didn't know I was awake yet. And he had, it looked like, like a 1940s like undercut, slick back with pomade, kind of shaved on the sides and
Hmm.
back. And he was blonde. And he was wearing like a black leather trench coat with the boots and everything. And I slid down from the chair and I said, "Can I said something. I said, "Can I go to bed now?" Because I was really exhausted and kind of out of it. And I fell down to my hands and knees, and I saw his boots come into my vision. And I said, he said, "I should have you executed for what you did to my man." And then he said, "Do you hear me?" And I kind of just fell over and fell on my side. And the reptile said, "It doesn't matter. He doesn't remember." And then I remember being carried like a duffel bag, like he had me under his arm, and my head was to the back, and he was right on my bladder, and I said, I have to pee. I said, "Can you put me down for a moment? I have to
Hmm.
pee." And it wasn't responding, and I said something like, "I'm going to pee on you," and I just kind of passed out because it was really like weird. Like, it was almost like it was this feeling was it was like intoxicating, I guess. Just this higher density, a higher kind of form of enlightenment. Like it was almost like you're at a higher level of enlightenment kind of. And yeah.
Hmm.
And then Robert told me later on that he took me through something called Looking Glass. It's in every underground base. There's Looking Glass technology, and it took me through a portal to the moon. And the moon is kind of like a taking off point for ships and things like that. They take off from like the dark side of the moon. That's why you don't see a lot of ships take off from Earth. And yeah, I remember all of a sudden I saw a bright light. And I looked up and I saw like one of those big round hospital like operating lights with the little LED lights everywhere that you see everywhere now. But this
Hmm.
was a long time ago, and I've never seen it before. And he sat me down in like a hospital bed, but it was very big and wide, like meant for one of them, like a reptile, something
Hmm.
big. And
Hmm.
the chair was like that too. And I found out later that the chair was actually reptilian technology, Robert told me, because
Hmm.
we have the ability to go up naturally one density. Like we can go from third to fourth through things like meditation, because astral projection, because fourth density is like the spirit world, like astral plane, spirit world. But he said reptiles are fourth density and they live in that density, like the spirit world. But they don't have the ability to go up one density through concentration in a fifth. And fifth is like you're more like uh, spiritually and technologically advanced beings are like fifth density. They
Hmm.
still have to use technology. They're not so high up there. They're in like ninth density. They can't just cross the universe with like a thought. They still have to use tech and all that, all things like that. But yeah, so I remember he told me that about the whole densities.
Hmm.
And he sat me on this bed, and there was a woman. I heard like tearing, like ripping and tearing, and this woman was putting like heart monitor stuff on me, like stickers. Like he said, he has to urinate, and I heard one long tear, and she put a catheter in me. And I asked her if I could hold her hand, and because like I said, I was almost like I was drunk or drugged or something. And I passed out, and then I woke up the next day, and I was by myself in this white room. I didn't know where I was, and she came in again, the same woman, and she started doing tests on me. Like at first, it was things like put your fingers between mine and squeeze, and it was just things like that. This like a physical she was giving me, and then she had a smart glass pad, which are those like clear plastic. They're not. I don't know if they're not plastic, but they're like clear pads. It's based off the smartphone. It's based off of it. And she just put both her hands on each corner, and an image appeared. And then she put her hand on the image and brought it up, and it was like a picture of like a person, like just a generic person. And she
Hmm.
just put her finger in it and spun it around. Put her finger, then put her hand on the heart and opened it up, and you can see the heart and the vas, all the
Wow.
circulatory system, things like that. So she was giving me like a physical with this machine, and she asked if she said I'm going home, and I didn't want to be stuck in that room all day again, and I said I don't, but I don't, I don't want you to leave me. I said I don't know anybody else. I said don't leave me, and I guess she liked that, and she just stopped and she grabbed my hand and she took me out, and when I came out, it was very hustle and bustle. It seemed like a shift change was happening. It was like there were men on the ground walking, and behind me there was like a train. So these men were getting on a train. Like I was on like one, it looked like you were inside of a courtyard of like a condominium, is what it looked like. And there were like lifts, but there was no railing or anything like that on the lifts. And they just lifted up, like hovered, like anti-gravity kind of thing, it looked like. And there were women on balconies. It was probably 5 floors on these like condos or whatever you want to call it. And they were waving. Some of them had babies and they were waving. They're like waving at the men going to work. And so she took my hand and took me to one of these lifts, and we just went up and went straight to her room. We just went forward and went to her room. And I remember seeing a woman there holding her baby, and there were no railings on these sidewalks. And she was like on the fifth floor with her baby, and there's no railings. And I said, "Aren't you afraid of falling down?" And she said, "No, you can't fall down." And she just stepped out. And there was like this invisible field on every floor, I guess. And I said, "Well, how far does it go?" She goes, "Oh, it goes all the way to the other end of the wall." She said, "The kids play on it. They're not supposed to, but they do." And so then this woman took me in, and she the room was really Spartan. It was just like white with it had like a couch, coffee table. There were like bar stools. It looked like a kitchen area, a bedroom, bathroom. She took me into the bedroom, and we started to kiss, and then she stopped and she said, "What's your name?" And I said, "I don't remember." And she said, "Come on, think. Everybody remembers their name." And I thought about it, and I said, "Daryl." And then, we started kissing more. We wound up, having sex, and I was laying on like the head of the bed, and she was on my chest, and I just kind of dozed off, and I woke up, and I was back in England. And it was like that. It was just like boom, but I remember that first day like it was just like I don't even know how I got back. I remember seeing like things of like I remember seeing different beings, like there was flashing. I was almost like I was having a dream of like a bunch of flashes happening. I saw like blonde hair, blue eyed beings, and I remember seeing like reptiles, and I remember being in a lot of pain, and I didn't know what was happening, and I just woke up. And when I woke up, my uniform was on my chair in my room in the barracks, but it was facing me, and it was like the shoes were tucked up under the chair, and the pants were laid down over the chair, and then the shirt, and then the hat. But it was like something I never would have done. I would have just taken my uniform off and put it in the closet. I still had my socks on, and I never would have slept with my socks on. And I got up and I was kind of like freaking out. And I remember I was saying like out loud to myself, I was with a woman, like what just happened? I was with a woman, and I couldn't figure it out. And I put my hands through my hair, and I had like burnt stubble on my hand, and I went down my chest hair, and I had burnt stubble. And then I had a full body mirror like in the barracks, and I was very toned. Like I was in very good shape. Like I was in good shape because I was in my 20s in the military, but I'd never been so toned, so much definition. And I walked out, and the one of the guys was like waiting for me, and he said, "Congratulations, you made it." And I said, "What?" And he said, "20 years is a long time. A lot of people don't make it." I didn't know what was happening, and I missed Saturday. I woke up on a Sunday. It was like I completely
Mhm.
missed Saturday, and yeah. So I don't know. That's how it kind of went from there.
All
And
right.
everybody in the Bears, yeah.
All right. All right. Let's take a break on that story there and get some of our viewers. Lots of questions coming in here for you, Daryl. Try to keep the answers a little short because there's a ton of them in here. I'd like to get everybody as I possibly can. This from Believe says, Daryl, do you personally know Max Spires?
No, no, but he's one of the few guys I listen to. I have listened to. Yeah, I don't
Okay.
listen to too many people,
Okay.
but him.
All right. Put y'all away first. Were you ever part of the Comet Elenin mission?
Things like names are fuzzy for me. The
Mm-hmm.
names I do remember are things that like the executive officer told me in person.
Okay. Okay. All right. Rose says, I had encounters with reptilian aliens, and one of them wanted to jump through a portal that he opened. I didn't do it. Would have been the reason the reptilian aliens would visit her? When obviously you were visited, but what she's asking, why was I visited? Would you know why? Or do they? I think the larger question is: do they analyze certain human beings that they look for certain traits? Do they snag the DNA off of me and 21 and me or whatever that thing is? I mean, why do they pick who they do, including
It
yourself?
could be that, it could be DNA, it could be bloodlines, but it's also their fourth density. So if you think about one too long, if you know of one, or if you even this is kind of like where Satanism gets into the picture. You can
Mm-hmm.
actually, because they are fourth density, which is like spirit world, astral
Mm-hmm.
plane, you can actually conjure them, which is a real
Oh.
thing. And then yeah, they can create portals.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if you think about one for too long, or if you
So would you
call
suggest
his
if
name
somebody
out,
so would you suggest if somebody thinks this is some fun and games, especially when you get some
Mhm.
guys out here watching shows and hey, wait a minute, he's talking about having sex with aliens, man. So might get titillated by that. They might try to conjure one. Chances are they're going to end up with some kind of demon like an incubus or a succubus. So I suggest that they don't. By the way, welcome to the live chat. Additionally, is Jericho, Australian Ben, Curious, and Tammy Hall. All right, Daryl, let's get to another question for you. Do you believe in the moon landing? If so, why haven't we gone back?
I can believe it was real, but I can also believe that they probably got scared off by the reptiles or the Germans that were already there.
Hmm.
So I think that's probably why we didn't go back. And we do go back, but in the sense of portals, in the
Hmm.
sense that we have a contract with these negative beings, or we did. I'm not sure if we do anymore.
Hmm.
And we have to give them so many people
Hmm.
every year for, basically to be slaves in this program.
Okay. All right. Doreen B8951. Is there a such thing as planet Nibiru? Everybody's always talking about that.
I don't know of that. Yeah.
Okay. And then Believe says, Daryl, what was the purpose of your job?
Originally, it was I worked in the mines. Well, yeah, I was told the timeline. I spent 3 months in the mines of the moon, and then I was in the Dark Fleet, which I did pilot, but I also did things like infantry kind of. And then I was in Solar Warden as a pilot like the rest of the time. Or as Robert said, I was with them, which is like the Nordics is what the military calls them.
Nordics. All right. And Ark Bob says, you mentioned the reptilians. What about the large humans known as the giants? Can you describe their appearance or height?
Is giants or reptilians?
Well, I can't differentiate here. No, it'd be humans. I guess did you see giant humans?
Yeah, I mean, like the Nordics, when a lot of ETs when they get older, they live thousands of years. A lot of these ETs,
Hmm.
and as they get to a certain point where they get into old age, their bones begin to grow again, and they get very tall. I've seen like 14 and a half feet beings, but they're very
Hmm.
skinny. They're
Hmm.
not, because they become very slender. Only their bones grow,
Hmm.
and I never really saw a big hulking giant that you would think of.
You mentioned you were surprised that the reptilian was standing there, and then here's a picture or a portrait of a typical Garden of Eden where the serpent appears to have been walking upright. And I remember you said earlier that you were surprised, but it seems like reptilians have been walking upright for eons of time. Now, are they the main intercessors between other civilizations and ours? Because it seems like there's more reptilian information. I mean, people talk about grays, but not so much. And you mentioned the Nordics, and then you know the Palladians. But the reptilians, they seem to be like the thing. Are they the head, or are they just the nasty ones, or what's the situation here?
Well, I was told we got into a war with them. We once worshipped them like gods a long time ago, like Babylonian and Sumerian and things like that. But Egypt, I met like a reptile, which was Michael Aquino. That goes further on the story, and yeah, he told me he was once worshipped in ancient Egypt. He somehow like took his consciousness and was able to possess the body of Aquino and use it almost like a puppet, but it was actually a reptile underground. And yeah, we got into a war with these negative beings. We got outside help from other ETs. And one of the part of the deal of their defeat was they had to live underground. They didn't have to
Mhm.
live, they didn't have to leave the earth, but they had to live underground. And they've been infiltrating us through our religions and things like
Mm.
that ever since.
All right. Why are they abducting humans?
I mean, it has to do with a lot of it has to do with our DNA. Our DNA is very malleable. That's one of the reasons it could be almost spliced with almost anything else. We have a lot of different DNA strands from a lot of different ETs from different
Mhm.
worlds. I think that beings from different worlds.
Mhm.
So a lot of it has to do with that. Also, we're actually very creative. We're good engineers. We just don't live long enough. They shorten our lifespan
Mm.
purposely because they're
Ah,
afraid of our true potential.
bastards. All right. So you suggested there are brothels here. Now, where were they in space or on a planet or on a ship? Where were the brothels?
It was in the moon itself, yeah, and that was like your only motivation to work was like brothels in the moon,
Or
and
where'd they get the women?
they would get kidnapped too. They would get taken too. I remember
Well,
seeing like a group of
like
them. Yeah,
is that maybe from the southern border? Probably.
I mean it could be. I don't really know about that, but I mean there were women get people volunteer, people get put in through what you call it contracts,
Mhm.
generational contracts,
Mhm.
not just you, but like your grandparents, people who are
Mhm.
Freemasons and things like that. They sign generational
Mhm.
contracts where it can affect not just them but their children or children, children,
Okay.
things like that.
So the question came out: were there men prostitutes as well? I mean, you are talking about the Navy.
No, it wasn't. There was no men because it was the men mostly did all the work. There was like mining and things
Well,
like
that's
that. The
good.
men did the work. Yeah, but the women were also like they're also nurses and things like that, and
But
doctors.
there are a lot of rear admirals in the Navy, aren't there?
Yeah, I suppose so.
All right. Virginia Boy says, how far away did you travel?
I mean, when I asked Robert about it, I don't know the exact light years or anything like that. Well, he said I had been to more worlds than him, and this was the executive officer that was very old. He told me he'd been age regressed 17 or 18 times, and he was around 400 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And he's from the year 2580, where
Mm-hmm.
everybody looks like Mike Pence.
Wow. Sorry to hear
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Wow. You left me speechless on that one, man. All right. Now Jericho asked this kind of a tongue-in-cheek question here. Now, I don't know; it's a little political, but it says, can we get them to grab the liberals and take them to another planet?"
I mean, we've all been deceived. So, I mean,
Okay,
I think there's going to be an awakening
okay,
period coming up pretty
all right,
soon.
all right. And back on the thread of thought here. Is it true that when we see new technology, it's actually 20 years old?
Oh, I would agree with that. If not,
Mhm.
yeah. I
Of
mean,
course,
we've been,
that's what
yeah.
was said in the movie Enemy of the State. The guy said, "Whatever you see, we're 25 years, whatever you're using." And you also in the first hour, Daryl D. James, you mentioned the 5G network, and now if we're trying to get everybody on this 5G network, is there a sinister part of this network that's why they want everybody to be on it?
I was told in the beginning, yeah, there was, but I was also told that the positive people in the military, it's mostly going to be the military.
Mm-hmm.
He told me about Trump becoming president, but he said Trump's just a figurehead. He said it's mostly just the military, not just the United States, but all around the world. And yeah, he said that they're getting, control of these negative technologies that we're going to be used against us.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's going to be used for more positive in
Mm-hmm.
the future. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
probably happening right now. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's changing hands.
All right, and we probably got Biden piloting a geriatric ship. Here's believe it says, Daryl, are you a Christian?
Yes.
All right. Now, all right. So how does your Christianity tie into this? Do you see parallels? Does the Bible become more alive to you if you read it? I mean, do you see parallels, or you see, for instance, I just showed you that Garden of Eden depiction of the reptile, and reptilians are mentioned throughout the Bible. Do you think you have a clearer understanding of end time events as a result of your experience with the Navy secret space program?
I don't know about end time events, but I asked the executive officer because I was being tortured by a Kino, the reptile, whatever it was. And it was black. It was like onyx black,
Did it
shiny
look like
black.
this one here?
No, he had almost like a long snout with fangs and gold like alligator eyes, but he
Well,
had
this is alligator eyes,
kind of, kind
fangs.
of.
All right.
Yeah, yeah. But
Okay.
I mean, yeah, yeah. I mean, I said, in the name of Christ, what do you want? And he said, stop it, stop saying that. And then I thought about it, and I said, well, in the name of Jesus Christ, I command to let you go.
Hmm.
And he started undoing my straps, and I said, and he started talking to a Satanist that was helping him, helping me torture me.
Hmm.
And I said, in the name of Yeshua, I command you to stop talking to him. This was
Hmm.
just like a hunch, and it worked, and he stopped talking. But then, the Satanist got caught onto it and knocked me out.
Hmm.
And I asked Robert, the executive officer, that's his name was Robert. His first name was Robert. And I asked him, was Jesus Christ real? And he said one of the first things people do when they get looking glass technology is they ask to see Christ. And he goes, yeah. He said, yes, he's real, and his name holds power, is what he said.
Hmm. Now, were you a Christian when you were fornicating with the alien?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
I
hey,
mean,
man.
I don't know if you call me practicing, but I mean, yeah. I mean, I always feel like I always felt like I was a Christian. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, now if anybody's judging that, and obviously it's not something a professing Christian would want to do, fornicate with an alien. But on the other hand, I haven't met a Christian yet that's perfect, and everyone has sins, and so if it wasn't for Christ, we'd all be the end of all of us. But so anyway, I guess that's a matter of where the line's drawn. All right. Rose says, "Do you know anything about the My Labs?"
No, but I mean, I know the underground bases are pretty bad, and they have the adrenochrome harvesting and everything like that.
Hmm.
All underground bases do that stuff.
So
There's
so
actually
so
caverns, huh?
so Jim Caviezel is right. They are harvesting adrenochrome.
Yeah, and yeah, there's caverns underground, the underground bases. So the guys that actually work on the base don't know, but there's like a satanic clique that works on the base, and they're straight up Satanists. And they work with the reptiles, and they get that's how they get the drug.
Hmm. And I think it may have been Jim Caviezel said it, but somebody said recently that adrenochrome is like 4 times more potent than heroin, and the elite are just addicted to it. And 85,000 missing children on from the border, and one half of the country could care less. All right, here's Jericho coming back with this, and the Bible says nothing about aliens. So how can Christianity and aliens both be true?
I mean, I can't answer that for him. I can't.
Well, now the classic answer to that, and there is some truth to that, is it doesn't mention airplanes either.
Mhm.
So everything, in fact, Jesus said about Jesus, everything that he has done, the books of the world could not contain what he has done. So we only have a small window, and in fact, beyond that, it also says that we see through a glass darkly, and then we shall be known even as he is known. So right now, everything is foggy to us as humans in this dimension. So we may not see everything. So certainly, but in fact, the Bible does mention aliens. It says the prince of the power of the air, and that's who our enemies are, and that's where the controllers come from, the air, and that's where the station of the aliens seems to be right there. So clearly, it does mention alien powers in the Bible. All right, is Doreen B8951 isn't Project Looking Glass for looking into the future?
It's for looking into the future. You can go anywhere. Like, you can go in the past and the future. And he told me it was 94% accuracy. He said there is a 4% uh, another outcome and a 2% variable. Because he was telling me about Trump. He said there's a 94% chance he could win. There is a 4% chance that Hillary Clinton would win, and then there was like a 2% variable in the sense of like Jeb Bush would win or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. So that's how it goes. But yeah,
So
you can walk in, you can walk step through the looking glass. That's why they call it looking glass
mhm.
technology, and show up like in the past or in the present in that timeline.
We had a guest on the program that said they were part of the government's secret jump program, and they claimed that Obama was a participant in this jump program. Have you ever heard of that?
No, no, I've
And
never
I
heard of
think
the
it's
jump.
talking about jumping through time or jumping through space. Now, when you're talking about time traveling, and you mentioned the word age regression as a result of that, how far in the future did you go, or how much age did you lose? Give us a little bit more detail on that.
Oh, it was 20 years, and but they also at the end of your 20 years they ask you if you would like to do another 20 years for a total of 40,
Mhm.
because there is no psychological damage until 40 years.
How many years were you in the Navy and or in the secret program?
In the secret program, I was in. They gave me like a 2 year extension, I believe, and so it was like 22 or 23 years.
How old are you now, Daryl?
I'm 46.
Are you retired from the Navy?
No, no, I'm not retired. No,
Uh,
I got out after that. I got out
you
after
got
that.
out. Uh,
Yeah, I had a bad time. Yeah, because I had all these memories that I couldn't make any sense of.
okay. You said early in the first hour that you love or play the game of Halo.
Hmm.
How many hours a day did you use to play it?
Oh, I don't know. It was kind of like living in the barracks. It's kind of like a college dorm where
Hmm.
we were hooking the machines up through a
Hmm.
cable, so we were playing big teams against each other.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I was playing once a week, probably for
Okay.
a couple hours
All
once
right.
a
So
week.
what? It wasn't just daily, constantly, every waking moment on it.
Yeah, yeah.
And
It
the
was like
reason
a
I
couple
asked
hours.
because it would seem that's a pretty violent game to begin with, but wouldn't you think that the government certainly has the ability, and probably private enterprise as well? Speaking of Google, YouTube, or Facebook, or who knows who, have the ability to impregnate within those sequences uh, thoughts or ideas that you would not even know that you're receiving, and it could possibly be that you were brainwashed in some way by these games with a kind of a writer information coming through that you can't detect with your normal senses.
Yeah, I mean, because they say you're at a different wavelength of like you're at like that hypnotism, brain pattern whenever you
Hmm.
watch even television and not just video games.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, you're much more easily influenced. But I mean, I think a lot of the video games, especially the combat first person
Hmm.
shooters, are probably funded by the United States military.
Hmm.
I would say a lot of those first person shooters, if
Hmm.
not all of them, are. Yeah.
So my follow up question would be: how do you know for sure that you haven't been programmed through those video games?
I mean, I was told by the executive officer, like when you get out of the military, you get to talk to the top three in command. So I talked to the master chief, who was an off-world German, and then I talked to the executive officer and the commanding officer, and the executive officer told me all this stuff, like in person, because he didn't want me to think. I think he knew I wasn't going to go back into the chair and get my mind rewiped because I refused to do that. So I think he was just trying to. He said that most people commit suicide within the first 6 months that have
Now,
memories of the 20 year back.
when they did the mind wipe, they didn't use that MIB light thing, did they?
I think it has to do with the chair. When you get into that chair, I think it does that as well. It wipes your memory
Okay,
as well.
does it only, are they able to wipe only the memory of you, say, well, obviously they didn't wipe your memory of having sex with the alien, but obviously, and you relayed a whole lot of information. So what part of it did they wipe? Did you get the memories back?
They can do like point A to point B. They can't take like little pieces out here and there. They can only do like from kind of like Men in Black. They can only do like from this time to that time. But it's not foolproof. And since and he told me, he said you're gonna remember your memories in real time is how he put it. So as I'm making new memories in this different life, I remember them here. So it's like I remember the beginning and I remember the end, but the stuff in the middle was fog. But it's almost like when I get up in the morning and I'm making eggs and I'm washing dishes or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, I kind of get memories here and there, almost like a dream I had that come back to me. And yeah, like I said, if if he didn't tell me this personally, if a captain in the Navy didn't tell me all this stuff personally, I would have just blew it off. Of just it's just my imagination. But
Mm-hmm.
I had a captain tell me all this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Is
because he
this
was afraid.
is this secret space program still going on with the Navy?
Oh yeah, definitely. But I would say it's more like positive now. I would say Solar Warden has the solar system under lockdown right now, and negative ETs can't get in or out. I don't think anybody can get in or out right
Is
now.
any of this technology has our government received advanced technology from them? Defensive?
Oh yeah, they call it ET tech. Yeah, that's what they call it. They call it ET tech. That's what like cell phones and everything else, smartphones. That's
Would that make China wary about starting a nuclear war with us or World War III in any term? That they would know that we have alien technology that could just wipe them out?
I mean, they may have it too. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
the ETs would do the whole thing that
yeah.
is we do to each other that oh hey these guys they took this weapon you might want to take
Hmm.
it too you might want to sign this contract too because the Chinese signed the contract maybe that's how they got us into signing contracts with all these negative ETs.
Hmm. Mm. All right. Jericho says, are they hostile or friendly? And either way, why don't they make themselves known? There's always these, Daryl, as you know, there's always this cat and mouse game with these aliens. I always used to say, I'd punch one in his big black eye, similar to this guy sitting here behind me. But, where's the big revelation? Why are they playing this cat and mouse game?
Well, like I said, part of the contract was they had to live underground. They couldn't be directly into our lives anymore. Contracts are very big for ETs. It's like a karma thing. They have to follow contracts. It's part of the deal.
Mhm.
And also, it's just, I mean, we're just one world in a very large universe, and a lot of ETs they don't really want to come here or anything like that. And the ones that are here, the more negative ETs that live
Mhm.
underground, like I said, I think they're being routed out by our own people and by positive ETs, or they're being taken out these underground bases and
Oh,
stuff like that. So,
okay. A viewer asked this question to Daryl. Why can't people see anything on the moon with a telescope?
well, I mean, I'm sure they do have cloaking technology, and it's also another thing that we were talking about with ETs. As there are different densities, we're artificially kept at a lower kind of existence. Our enlightenment is very low. We're artificially kept low. We should
Mhm.
be at fifth already with the other ETs, but
Yeah.
we're artificially pushed down at low. So they could be doing things. Like I said, a fourth density being could be, in your room and you wouldn't even know it unless they wanted to show you their presence. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because they're kind of on that different spirit world kind of plane.
Hmm. What plane do you operate on?
I think I'm with everybody else. I think I'm the third density with everybody else.
Hmm. All right. Curious says, Daryl, have you ever been threatened for exposing all this?
No, no, no. I mean, I was told some things by Robert. I was told that I have positive beings looking out for me. things like that, and higher density beings can manipulate lower densities.
Hmm.
So yeah, hopefully they're looking out for me.
Hmm. You said you're a Christian. Do you believe angels are looking out for you, or alien beings?
I mean, like I said, it's a higher plane of existence. So maybe those very high planes of existent beings, we used to consider them angels at one time. I mean, maybe they are angels in a sense. I wouldn't doubt it at all.
Okay.
Now, like I said, it's just a higher plane of existence.
Okay. Okay. Put you all the way first as Daryl. Was the looking glass also called a chronovisor?
I don't remember that.
Okay. Australian Ben from down there asked this question. Is the secret space program mostly based out of Antarctica, and is it a force for good or bad?
I would say any underground base has a secret space program, and I would say in the beginning it was for bad, very much. But now I would say it's more positive, and I would say, like, I mean, as you said, with this movie coming out with the child trafficking and everything else,
Mm-hmm.
this is coming to light. You can't just throw. I was told we couldn't just throw everything at the public at once. He called it like
Mm-hmm.
soft disclosure. We have to slowly like plant the seed so that people are
Yeah.
ready. Otherwise, nobody would be able to accept
Right.
this. Nobody, so we have to slowly
Well, yeah. I
let
mean,
it.
that's kind of how kind of how not to get too political here, but in the beginning, remember Obama used to say, people just want to cohabitate. He was against gay marriage, and then, oops, just remember, gay marriage is good. So then it became gay marriage, then it got gay marriage, and then it got, oops, we need drag queens, and then, oops, we need child mutilation, and oops, I mean, so you talk about that. That's the classic way. I mean, just that topic, just taking that topic as an example. There's a lot of them that you can do that with. Climate change, probably another one, but the gradation. Because if we were told what the end of it was, that say 10 years ago, if we were told, America was told that, hey, they're going to operate on your 3-year-old, and regardless of your permission, and mutilate them, and put their penis inside, and then have some drag queen screw them. I mean, you would literally shoot that person saying such a thing. Then, but you can see where you just little by little. So now the public is now we are where we are. We should have said no the first time; it worked out better. All right. Belief says were these hook?
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
Because I was told by Robert, I was told about Harry Hay, and I didn't know who that was.
Mm-hmm.
And Harry Hay started the gay rights movement in the 50s. And he said that, yeah, and he was telling me that's how they slowly implement things. And he said that the Harry Hay marched in NAMBLA, which is North American Man Boy
Mm-hmm.
Love Association, in
Mm-hmm.
the 70s and 80s. And he said that the gay rights movement from day one was funded by the CIA to eventually make pedophilia acceptable to the American people.
Mm-hmm.
Because once a civilization accepts pedophilia, it falls almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Well,
why it was done.
we're about this close to the legalization. I can tell you that right now.
And that's why the military stepped in too. He said they start castrating children. They try to make pedophilia legal, and he said that's why like the positive people of the military stepped in because that was the last straw. He said
They stepped in and did what?
to stop all this. And you're starting to see it now. You're starting to see with like I said, the movies and the propaganda is changing. And in my opinion, I think a lot of this stuff is coming to light. I think, and
Mm-hmm.
like I said, people can't accept it all at once. It has to be. They have to take small bites to
Mm-hmm.
eventually figure out
Mm-hmm.
that all these people that you're these movie stars that you worshipped and these singers and Hollywood and they're all in on it. They're all into this adrenochrome thing. I was told
Mm-hmm.
that Tom Cruise was on my base
Mm-hmm.
because he was the main distributor of adrenochrome, and he got
Really?
adrenochrome directly from the Satanists, the underground base and stuff like that.
Wow. That's
Yeah, and Tom Hanks was like the king.
that's a name. Now I believe Tom Hanks because there's something about him always having a picture of a shoe of a little child, one shoe that he for a while he put out these pictures. Nobody knew what he was doing. Now I understand what he was broadcasting. He probably got a whole cachet of adrenochrome. And that's the other thing here. Every conspiracy theory that was spoken of in the last 2 or 3 years has come true. Every single one of them. And I noticed when they're talking about the left was talking about Jim Caviezel's movie The Sound of Freedom. They're saying the adrenochrome, it's QAnon. We making this stuff up. Well, no, you're a cooperating witness. You obviously have some sort of firsthand knowledge about it, and it is not being made up. It is an actual thing, and it's a conspiracy theory that in the next couple of years, somebody's going to start marketing it like they legalize pot distributors all across the country. They could probably legalize adrenochrome distributors too as well. All right,
And they're
question.
panicking. Yeah, like the mainstream news is panicking over it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So somebody's already asked that question. Let's see. All right, Daryl, are you mates with? Have you ever heard of a Lieutenant Colonel SC or Andrew Basagio?
No,
All
no.
right, and I know Andrew Basagio, I believe, was a time traveler. He was on this program. Somebody's referring to that. Daryl, are you DD 214 classified?
Classified. Yeah, well, I have a DD-214. In what way?
Um,
Classified.
all right. I'm not familiar with the classifications, but the follow up question on that was what security clearance did you have?
I just had a secret. I could handle crypto and stuff like that. I was a radio man when I was in the SeaBee, so I had a crypto.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Uh, and again, we're talking mainly concerned with these reptilians. I've always said if you tell a joke, they'll pop a scale and kind of makes them mad. But Australian Levin says, do you know of any of the known elites that are reptilians, say, such as Zuckerberg or Elon Musk?
Well, like I said, I know of they're able to. I was told by a guy on base they can extract a consciousness from a person. That it has to be before puberty, but it can't be too young because the body's mostly sedentary. So it can't be 3 or 4 years old. It has to be around 9 or 10. And then like one of these reptilian beings can actually possess the body. They have like technology to extract the soul of the consciousness, and the body just kind of sits there and just waits around until it's possessed by this reptile. And I know, so I know about that. I know that's how much I know about it.
Mhm.
Anyways.
All right. Curious says, Daryl, are ancient buildings and sites such as the pyramids, Machu Picchu, and others alien tech?
I was told that yeah, like the Egyptian pyramids were things like very high tech as far as I think there were power sources. Robert was telling me like they were actually they could generate power. But then other pyramids like the Aztec pyramids and things like that, they were kind of just like loosh factories, which is like negative emotions and things like that, like
Hmm.
the fear and things
Hmm.
like that for reptiles.
Hmm. What did you mine when you were on the moon?
I believe mostly like titanium. ETs have a way of smelting titanium to make it much stronger than ours. But it could just be for the fact of just punishment. Many people were on the moon, like myself, were there for just punishment. And it was also that like to motivate you to work. Then you did sleep in the brothels. Then that was a big way how they got the children for adrenochrome harvesting. They would put them through portals and the underground bases. And yeah, they would keep them in cages and they would never see like the light of day. And they would electrify the cages and that's how they caused the adrenaline to activate. And then they would put a needle in near the base of the spine. That's how they would extract the adrenochrome.
Mm. Noticed the other day there's a video. I believe Biden was maybe in the Netherlands or somewhere, and you've probably seen the video where he starts biting on this little girl. Some woman's holding this little girl, and he's biting on her, nibbling on her, and her face is just complete terror, and she's turning away, trying to get away. Then Biden lunges in for the kiss or lick or what sniff. Did you see that video?
Yeah, kids know. Yeah, kids know when a person is no good.
But to me, that I mean, it is clear as day that child was terrified, and I think that children have a sense, sort of like animals do. You know, you have a dog. If a dog senses you have an evil spirit or an evil person or a bad man, it knows. It also knows if you're a good person too as well. Well, I think a lot of animals have that instinct, and I think children have that instinct too. But what I'm thinking is that was an act of how one of the ways that this creepy, nasty looking retard of a man, Joe Biden, goes in for this kid, terrifies her because he's reenacting what he does all the time, and that is scare kids to get the adrenochrome running. I think that's his normal behavior, and that's why he did it. It was natural to him to do that to the child.
Yeah, they're in such a bubble. Yeah, they just expose themselves.
All right. Does the space program treat any of beings like they're royalty?
I mean, I was treated that way for a while, but I mean, not permanently. I mean, not all the beings are bad. If
Mm-hmm.
that, a lot of them are positive.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's just like regular. It's just like with people. There's a positive and a negative, and that's just the way it is.
When's the last time you saw a reptilian? What year, date, or something?
Not since I came back. That was what 2005. probably 2004,
Mhm.
probably 2000. Wait, I started a program in 2003, so yeah, 2003
Um,
is when the last time I saw.
you mentioned, I think you mentioned in the first hour that the reptilians, because they don't have muscles in their face, that you can tell their attitude by their squinty bug eyes. But did you also say that their pupils go this way?
I remember going up and down
They
like
go
slits.
up and down.
Yeah, yeah, like alligators. Now some of them, the eyes are on the sides of the head, and some of them are more
Hmm.
forward like us.
Hmm. Did you see the video of the woman on the plane saying the person she was talking to was not real?
Yeah, and that was probably it. That was probably a reptile because they do shift. And I mean, and if somebody is possessed, like I said, if their consciousness is gone and a
Hmm.
reptile is possessing that body,
Hmm.
you could definitely the eyes will change and things like that. You could see it. You could see the eyes.
Because there's two witnesses that have come out and said they saw this guy's eyes, and they said they were reptilian. And the
Hmm.
woman, from what I can tell, the people around said that she was having a conversation with this guy and he wasn't speaking. And I remember you saying earlier that they talk to your mind. Is that right?
Hmm.
Like
Yeah, the
telepathically?
telepathic.
So a lot of what you're describing as reptilian behavior seems to have occurred on this plane. And you mentioned again about the reptilians walking and giant sort of reptilians. Are you familiar with earlier this year about in Las Vegas where a craft landed in this guy's yard and he said 9 foot reptilian aliens started walking around. Did you see that?
I did see that. Yes.
Well, to me, they're kind of just, again, they seem to be the same thing that you have described several times in this conversation so far.
Yeah, they could have been. I mean, there's different species of reptile. There's not just one, but yeah, there's like a royal cast and there's a working and there's a military cast.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, they are everywhere, and their
Um,
ships are being shot down. So their ship may have been, hit, and maybe they had an
is
emergency
that
landing, they had a forced
well? Let's
landing.
go. Let's go with that. Earlier, when we had the balloon fiasco, then he said there was all sorts of things flying around. They were shooting down things. They wouldn't tell us what it was. Were they shooting down UFOs?
I was told by the executive officer that you would see things like that in the news. You would see things like it looked like meteorites with like maybe silver or gold sparks flying behind it, and that maybe they would say it was like debris from a NASA craft that was coming down. And he said no, that was their ships, the reptilians and the Greys and things like that were being shot down by Solar Warden.
Hmm. Well, it's amazing it's amazing we have the technology to shoot them down. You'd think they'd have like some sort of super shield there, like Star Trek Enterprise. All right, so on our website, Daryl D. James, we have a poll question. The question is that people can take and have taken: does the U.S. have a secret space program? 83% say yes. 11% say can't answer that, and 5%. We got 5% non-believers out there say there's no such thing as a secret space program. Well, we certainly have a space program now. Trump invented the Space Force. So I don't know if that's does the Space Force qualify as is that part of the space program, the secret space program? Is that like the front a front?
Maybe that is soft disclosure as well, a way to kind of slowly tell the people what's going on. But like I said, look up Gary McGinnon. I mean, he hacked into NASA and he got a lot of files and he got social security numbers from off-world officers, which is basically what the program calls ETs. So ETs that were working directly for the United States Navy and
Mm-hmm.
this Solar Warden and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Solar Warden is a big piece of evidence that people don't look at as far as the secret space program.
Um,
I mean, Gary McGinnon. I'm sorry, yeah, Gary McGinnon. Look
yeah,
him up.
people have come out and said that there are indeed alien ships down in Area 51. Are those reptilian ships?
Oh, probably. And I would say Area 51 is kind of like a cover to hide something else. It's kind
Mm-hmm.
of like a decoy. Because, like I
Mm-hmm.
said, as far as I was told, all these underground bases have, direct contact with negative ETs.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, there's caverns deeper underground than the actual underground base, where
Mm-hmm.
there's reptiles and greys and things like
I
that.
see Congress in the last couple of days have made statements saying that they're wanting the government's UFO information uh, revealed, and there's always a battle. It's like revealing all the information from the JFK's assassination. You're never going to get it. It seems like they're always going to be holding on to something. And a lot of times, man, you do a Freedom of Information Act request, and they just don't even they just disregard that. I don't know. I don't think we'll ever get the truth. But all right, here's a question that somebody just wrote in. It says, Why do reptilians like molesting children?" And this person here says, like they did me at age 3 at Wright Patterson. So this person is claiming that they were molested by reptilians at age 3 at Wright Patterson.
Yeah, it causes fragmentations in the personality. If they have like these beings, they can see further in the future. That they can see down time, tell a person's future. If you're going to be part of these programs, they'll do things to you where you're a child, so they could fragment your personality, so you can handle this. So you won't, it won't destroy you or take your own life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not good either way. But I mean, it's a way to like fragment your personality, so
Mm-hmm.
you'll have, a multiple personality disorder. So
Mm-hmm.
you'll be able to just forget these memories, and that happens to people. I mean, and also there's something called louche, which is like a negative kind of emotion that we emit, and we emit a lot of it as children because children are so innocent. And it's something that like reptiles, they really don't feel like us. That they experience certain feelings, but they like experiencing fear of other beings. They actually like almost feed not just adrenochrome, but off of like almost like a spiritual essence that we put off called
Mm-hmm.
like louche, and it's
Mm-hmm.
something that they feed off of.
Yeah.
That's why things like wars are kind of created. Earth is like a big louche factory for them, a big negative emotion factory for negative
It,
beings,
it does
reptiles and
it does
stuff.
seem that the aliens have some fascination with humans and how they respond. You take Fire in the Sky movie with Travis Walton. They depict aliens sort of almost looking confused when Travis is screaming. They kind of look at each other. Like, why is he screaming? There've been a number of movies, and another movie that I happen to like is called The Missing. And in that movie, aliens are taking kids, and then they're doing a mind wipe on the parents. But this one woman, they can't wipe her mind from her child, and she says, "My child was taken." Everybody says, "You're crazy. You never had one." They couldn't mind wipe her, so they had this fascination. That's what the movie's about. What is this bond between this woman and her child that they can't wipe her mind? What is the bond, the connecting thing? And they wanted to know what that is. It does seem, and that seems to be an intransient thing. Whether it's consciousness or feelings or something, they want to know what that is because evidently they don't have that capacity. So there seems like they're always studying this. Maybe that's why they're always doing orifice looking around so they can see what's down in there, see what's going on. All right. So, is any of these aliens ever mentioned, or anybody you talk to ever mentioned a Bigfoot connection?
I mean, people I've talked to, yeah, like it seems like Bigfoot's, as far as what I know, it just as people I've talked to in the community and stuff like that, are yeah, they could somehow they're from different dimensions and maybe different planes of existence, higher level of higher planes. Like I said, like there's different densities and things like that. They sound like beings that are just from like different planes, higher planes of existence.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily things that just live out in the woods, but they can actually go
Mm-hmm.
through portals and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not saying I agree with everything. I'm a good listener, and I think your story is fascinating. But I would say for those that maybe have some doubt on what you're saying, so far we've had at least 2 of our regular viewers to this show say that they were attacked or molested by reptilians. So at least 2, and they're regular viewers. So my question is to the live chat: besides the 2 that said that they've had interactions with reptilians, is anybody else that's watching this show? Have you had any interaction, good or bad, with a reptilian or alien of any kind? Just put it in live chat, yes or hell no, or while you asking that question, whatever you want to say. All right. Here's another question. This is kind of a good question here because you mentioned, you actually brought up Trump, and I kind of segued to Biden on that, but are aliens concerned, or do they interfere with our elections?
Well, I was told that the military did interfere with the elections, but only because Hillary Clinton interfered first. So they basically just stole it back from the Clintons. And I was told that,
Stole it
yeah,
back.
they
Give it
just stole
back.
it back. What they
Wow.
did, yeah. And I was told like, first time presidents usually win the first time, but hardly any president wins the second time because people can't stand them the second time. So pretty much every president's been reelected. It's been fraudulent vote. The votes have been fraudulent for so long. And yeah, I mean, the military is stepping in right now and fixing all that. But yeah, I was told ETs really don't bother us with things like that. They really don't consider us important enough. But I was told that not just the U.S. military, but militaries all around the world are beginning to help us out with things like elections, but I mean, with everything right now, everything the
Did
militaries around the world are beginning to
Okay,
help us.
so you're speaking a little bit favorably toward the military industrial complex. did they take back the 2020 election, or they just let Biden have it, or did he win fairly?
Well, I mean, I think I was told about that, and it was a variable that they weren't ready for. With I told you there's like a 4% variable, and it was just the variable that they weren't ready for. And maybe it does have something to do with you can't just people weren't ready to accept it, and people hated Trump so much. They taught people to hate Trump so much that maybe they would have thought he was a dictator, even though he was trying to do something
Yeah.
good for the people. So and now people are getting they're nobody can stand Biden. I mean, nobody can stand him, and maybe the people will be ready next time around.
Mm-hmm. Um, all right, this person, because you heard my question earlier, another viewer said I was kidnapped at least 4 times. And I don't know if they're saying they were kidnapped by reptilians or not. But Grumpy says he he did a stripper from Canada. Okay, Grumpy. Okay, look, man. All right, looks like most people say no, but anyway, so maybe that's 3 right there. So the odds are. So what percent of the population do you think has been interfacing with aliens?
I mean, a lot. And I don't know about how much, but I remember I asked Robert, the executive officer, I asked him, I said, why do you deal with why do you do this? Why do you have people taken and enslaved, by these, reptiles and stuff and things like that? And he said that we have a contract. He said we signed a contract, and like I said, with ETs, contracts are very
Mm-hmm.
ironclad, and you
Well,
can't
see,
get out of them.
now we've had people on the show talk about those type of contracts starting maybe back in the Eisenhower days, but then a few of them have said that they've reneged on those contracts. That, like, for instance, they used to have to tell us who they're taking and what they're doing to them and when they're going to return them, that type of thing. Then they said to just quit telling people and just start snagging them and stuff. Is that which one? What's the truth on that?
I would say yes, and I would say probably it did breach the contract, and I think probably because we are so like low technology compared to the rest of them, they feel like they can get away with it. But that attracts the attention of the higher beings, like ninth density beings, which I guess maybe you would consider kind of like angels, and they kind of get in the way and they interfere when things like that. Positive beings, when they see one group of beings being just bullied and just cheated by another group of beings, they will step in, especially when it goes against contracts.
Hmm. Grumpy, I'm just playing around with you, brother. Um, by the way, we've got a clarification on that. Being abducted 4 times was from an insectoid. Now, in my opinion, Daryl D. James, the insectoids are even nastier because they got these like claw-looking things. Who wants to see that? It seems like reptilians got some, like they might have claws, but at least they're kind of like finger type. So, in what's in the hierarchy, where are the insectoids as compared to the reptilians?
I like the insectoids are the mantises I met. I met mantises on Mars, and they had a good sense of humor. You could tell a joke and you can get them laughing. Most ETs they wouldn't laugh, and they had like a weird kind of hissing cockroach kind of laugh. And
I'm laughing.
yeah,
Yeah.
but they were very decent. As long as you treat them decently, they were one of the first ones I saw that invited you into their home, asked you to sit down, asked if you wanted something to eat. They were very cordial, I guess, very human-like in that sense.
So if you're getting abducted by an insectoid, tell them a joke.
Yeah, I just tell them a joke. Yeah, but I mean, there's so many of them because they are insects. They're also mercenaries too. So
Hmm.
that there's just so many of them, and not all are good and not all are bad. But I would say overall they're pretty decent. The ones I met.
Dun, 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 dun. All right. Hey, Put Yahweh says, why do ETs mutilate cows and such? And there's been some very recent mutilations going on too.
I mean, maybe that has something to do with with the adrenaline. I've heard the drones and things like that kind of make a concoction. Now, this isn't firsthand knowledge, but I've heard that with the blood and the different maybe adrenaline and stuff like that, and they can just rub it on their skin and it absorbs through their skin. But I'm not 100% on that.
Mm-hmm. Uh, Here's something off of our Rumble channel, because we have a different chat going on over there. It says, if the firmament has been proved by the military and the moon is merely a projected image, could all of your experience have been exactly like outer space, a reality existing only in your mind?
I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, and I thought about that too. But I mean, like I said, I probably would have just blew this off as just false memories. But I was told, by a person and an actual the captain in the Navy, a captain in the Navy, that
Mhm.
this did happen to me,
And
and
you
these
and
things
you can
are real.
attest to the captain's sanity.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, I even asked him because he said he was, age regressed 17 or 18 times, and it does psychological damage to you. And I
Mhm.
said, well, how often do you get a psych eval? And he said every 2 weeks. He said he got a psych eval like every two
Okay.
weeks because he was age regressed so many times.
All right. Getting almost to the end of the program. It says, what? Who are making the crop circles?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't. Maybe it's some sort of a code that they're trying to send out.
Yeah,
Maybe
I mean
it's
that
messaging.
seems pretty antiquated stuff. A crop circle. I mean, you think in this digital age and all the technology that you're talking about, seems like a
Yeah,
crop circle is like some kind of throwback.
or maybe it's kids, pushing down wheat fields with a board like
You
this.
go
I don't
go. You go with the board. Go
know.
the board.
Maybe I don't know. I don't know.
Um, what would you believe will happen to you when you go to sleep for the last time?
Oh wow. I hope I get to meet, all my friends and family and things like that. You know, I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I know there's a consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and I know there is an afterlife of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I mean, that's what I hope. That's what I think.
You mentioned the first hour. Somebody asked a question if you're a Christian. I don't judge people's when they make that claim at all. Far be it from me. But a lot of people claim that they sort of have an experience of some sort, like to meet Jesus, or they have a overwhelming feeling of change, or their life changes instantly. Did you have any of those, or was it sort of a gradual thing where you just kind of came to accept, well, he must be out there?
Well, I mean, it was I was raised as a Christian, but like I said, when you get into these programs, you realize it's a lot more spiritual than you didn't realize. It's a lot less Star Trek and a lot more spiritual. It's a lot less technology and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a lot more spiritual. And as I said, like this executive officer told me that one of the first things people ask for once they get looking glass technology is to see Christ, and
Mm-hmm.
that's they're not allowed to step through the looking glass and
Mm-hmm.
interfere, but they can watch it almost like a mirror.
Do they
And
get to
say,
see Christ?
yeah, yeah. He said, yeah.
Did you see Christ?
No, not that I remember.
So is basis for your Christianity on the testimony from others who did see Christ?
Well, I'm basing my Christianity off, and saying the name of Jesus Christ really made this reptile follow whatever I told him to do. He
Mm-hmm.
was under my command, I guess
Mm-hmm.
you would say. And that's pretty powerful whenever you witness something like that personally.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, I mean, that's evidence as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there's different things on the internet and YouTube where people who work, or TikTok and all this stuff, where people who work in underground bases are told they're not allowed to say Jesus Christ. They can't say that because, and I'm guessing
Okay, because
because of
this is to me it's kind of an interesting angle on a profession of Christianity. So um, you do realize there's a scripture that says, "Not everyone that calls me or says Lord, Lord will enter into the kingdom of heaven." So you've said His name, but it seems to me what Christ when He said that, "Not everyone who calls me Lord, Lord shall enter into the kingdom of heaven," tells me there's something else that is indicative of whether or not a person actually knows Him. So, I mean, are you sure, based on that, Jesus saying that, are you sure that you have got past just saying the name Lord Jesus to get out of alien abduction to an actual receiving Him in your heart, sort of making Him the Lord of your life and searching His Word to find out more about Him?
Well, I mean, I have further to go. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to say I'm perfect in
No,
any
we all
way.
do. Absolutely.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that is I'm surprised myself that I'm not born again just because of seeing that, and it kind of shocks me. Like, why aren't I more involved in religion and things like that after witnessing things like that and after being told that His name holds power and things like that. And yeah, I'm only human, and maybe this is just maybe that was a path, and maybe I'm heading in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll have to see where it goes from here. But as I said, seeing that firsthand and seeing it take effect like that was very powerful. And yeah, I mean, it was powerful.
So
That's all
you've
I know.
never said anything like, Lord Jesus, I know I'm a sinner. Come into my heart. Forgive me of my sins. I believe that you were born again. Were you raised from the dead for my sins? Have you ever said anything like that?
Mm, no, I mean, well, I pray before I go to bed
Okay.
sometimes and things like that.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, man. I'm going to put you on my prayer list because if you're not really born again or saved, we're going to pray you right up in there, man. So you got some people. I'm sure the people watching the show will pray for you too, just in case. Hey, I'm always checking my own salvation too, there, Daryl. So don't think I'm sitting over here thinking I'm high and mighty because I've got my own baggage to carry. But I do try to follow after Christ and learn more about Him and make Him the Lord of my life. Well, listen, Daryl, we're here at the end of the program. Man, what a fascinating story. I had no idea the detail that you brought to the show concerning what's happened to you. Anything you'd like to say in the final moments?
I mean, no, just that I would have hope. I mean, I was told by that executive officer that things are going to change and things are going to become much better. We're going to be given technology, things like disabilities, children, things like that are going to be a thing of the past. And he said it's going to happen in my lifetime. And an economy that's going to be so strong that you're going to be able to pay off a brand new car in 6 months and pay off a house in 4 years.
Mm,
So it's going to be better than the 50s, I was told. Yeah, and it's going to be wonderful. Oh yeah, it's going to be wonderful, I was told,
okay.
compared to
Okay.
what it is
Now,
now.
that's kind of the opposite of what the Bible says, talking about the Great Tribulation. So we better check all our facts.
I was told 1,000 years of peace and beyond. Yeah,
Okay.
1,000 years and
All right.
beyond.
Hey, Daryl, man, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Okay, Daniel, you're welcome. You're
Hey,
welcome.
I'll talk again.
All right,
All
bye.
right.
Good
Bye.
night.